This slick, lanky man, all 6 feet of him, was named Su-Yol. Handsome, intelligent, a keen observer of social cues, and adept at navigating interpersonal relationships. His sole ambition was to climb the corporate ladder. One morning, before heading to work, Su-Yol discovered his car had been vandalized. He checked the security footage at the property management office, only to find himself frantically dancing on top of his own car, explaining the damage. Slightly embarrassed, Su-Yol chalked it up to a night of heavy drinking and reckless behavior. Team leader Kim, of the narcotics unit, while pursuing a drug dealer, accidentally clipped the suspect's leg, causing him to fall to his death. After some astute deduction by Su-Yol, team leader Kim confessed that he had intentionally tripped the dealer, seeking revenge for a fallen colleague killed by the same criminal. In reality, Su-Yol targeted team leader Kim for personal gain. Previously, Kim had arrested a drug dealer who happened to be the police chief's nephew. Su-Yol's actions were a calculated move to curry favor with the chief. Following the incident, Su-Yol's superiors promised to recommend him for promotion to the chief. This time, he was certain of advancement. Su-Yol was ecstatic, practically giddy with joy. After work, he went to the public bathhouse. Freshly scrubbed and stepping out, a wave of dizziness washed over him. As his mind swam, a mysterious figure entered. Clad in a motorcycle helmet and leather gear, the enigmatic individual, without a word, sucker punched Su-Yol. The assailant, brimming with aggressive energy, relentlessly attacked. Utterly bewildered and unable to defend himself, Su-Yol was knocked into the pool. By the time he climbed out, the mysterious figure had vanished. Furious, Su-Yol confronted the receptionist. He was told that they had reviewed all the security footage but found no trace of the attacker. Su-Yol was exasperated. How could someone simply disappear into thin air? Despite his frustration, the promise of a promotion offered some solace. However, this too took a turn. A colleague with close ties to the police chief snatched the promotion from under his nose. Seething, Su-Yol received consolation from his superiors. They offered another opportunity to distinguish himself, this time involving Councilman Du. Councilman Du was in the midst of an election campaign. Victory seemed assured, but his cousin, Detective Du of the Homicide Division, had caused a major problem. Su-Yol was told that if he could help Councilman Du resolve this issue, he would be guaranteed a significant achievement. Su-Yol's spirits were revived. A meeting with Councilman Du was quickly arranged, and Su-Yol wasted no time showering him with flattery. Su-Yol learned that the trouble caused by Detective Du involved a patrol officer from the local precinct named Kyung-Ti, a man of simple nature and overflowing compassion. Days earlier, Kyung-Ti had encountered a young girl posting missing person flyers for her mother, Wai-Na, who had vanished days prior. Kind-hearted Kyung-Ti resolved to help. He returned to his precinct to investigate Wai-Na's disappearance. He discovered that a missing person report had been filed for her, handled by none other than Detective Du. When Kyung-Ti inquired about the case, Detective Du was dismissive, labeling Wai-Na a bar girl with a history of drug offenses, suggesting she had likely just run away. He showed no interest in pursuing the case. Kyung-Ti had no choice but to take the girl home. She mentioned that her mother had finished preparing her birthday present. Touched, Kyung-Ti became even more determined to investigate. He couldn't bear to see the girl lose her mother. With the help of a colleague, Kyung-Ti tracked Wai-Na to an apartment complex. He posted flyers there and, with the help of a neighbor, located Wai-Na's apartment. But she appeared to be absent. Kyung-Ti called a locksmith. As the lock was being picked, the building security guard informed him that someone had just entered the building. The pungent smell of bleach assaulted Kyung-Ti's nostrils. Following the odor, he arrived at the bathroom, where he discovered a clump of hair matted with blood in the drain. At that moment, Detective Du, the officer in charge of the case, arrived, not to assist, but to brutally assault Kyung-Ti. Kyung-Ti was seriously injured. This was the issue Councilman Du was most concerned about, the problem Su-Yol needed to solve. Su-Yol visited Kyung-Ti, urging him to reconcile with Detective Du to smooth things over. However, Kyung-Ti revealed his discovery of the bloody hair in Wai-Na's bathroom drain. Su-Yol personally inspected the scene, but found nothing. He concluded that Kyung-Ti had simply watched too much television. Suyol then met with Detective Du, who vehemently denied the existence of the bloody hair. Suyol, lacking any real desire to uncover the truth and eager to resolve the matter quickly, pushed for a peaceful resolution between the two parties. While Suyol lacked investigative zeal, Kyung-tae remained persistent. He snuck into Wai-na's apartment at night. Wai-na's neighbor approached, claiming to have a clue. Kyung-tae followed her to the adjacent apartment. Suddenly, the neighbor's demeanor shifted drastically. Brandishing a knife, she frantically accused Kyung-tae of attempting to assault her. This incident earned Kyung-tae a reprimand from his superiors. Suyol questioned the neighbor about the incident. She maintained her accusation against Kyung-tae, but Suyol quickly saw through her lies. He called Detective Du, realizing he had orchestrated the false accusation against Kyung-tae. Suyol warned Detective Du against trying to deceive him or drag him into the mess. "This ends here," he declared. Exhausted, Suyol returned home and fell asleep. He was startled awake by a drop of water on his face. Opening his eyes, he saw the same mysterious figure from the bathhouse. Before Suyol could react, the figure headbutted him into unconsciousness. He awoke in a bathroom. The bathroom was bathed in an eerie blue light. Invisible to the naked eye, bloodstains covered the floor and walls. As Suyol tried to make sense of his surroundings, the mysterious figure, now outside the door, examined the bloodstains. Suyol attempted to subdue the figure, but was swiftly overpowered. The figure escaped on a motorcycle. Suyol managed to block the figure's path, but the figure, seemingly unhurried, taunted him with the bike. Just as the motorcycle was about to run him over, the scene vanished. The mysterious figure disappeared, leaving Suyol back in his living room, his head covered in glue. The next day, as orchestrated by Suyol, Detective Du publicly apologized to Kyung-tae. This spared Detective Du from disciplinary action and shielded his cousin, Councilman Du, from public criticism. Suyol had successfully completed his task. However, Detective Du then revealed a new development. An investigation had revealed that Wai-na's credit card had been used the previous day, seemingly validating Detective Du's initial assessment that she had simply run away. But things weren't that simple. Kyung-tae returned to Wai-na's apartment. He remembered seeing a wrapped teddy bear during his previous visit, assuming it was the birthday gift Wai-na had intended for her daughter. He wanted to give it to the girl. However, he found the apartment being demolished by construction workers, the teddy bear gone. Kyung-tae was puzzled by the sudden demolition. Meanwhile, Councilman Du was hosting his daughter's birthday party. As the hero of the hour, Suyol was among the guests. Councilman Du introduced him to numerous influential figures as a gesture of gratitude. After the party, Councilman Du's daughter received a mountain of gifts, including a teddy bear. Councilman Du's wife remarked that the teddy bear contained a hidden surveillance camera, a popular new toy. Councilman Du paled. It turned out Wai-na was dead, and he was the killer. He had been having an affair with her. Unbeknownst to him, the teddy bear Wai-na intended for her daughter had recorded the entire murder. Meanwhile, Kyung-tae, miraculously, found the teddy bear amidst the debris outside Wai-na's building. He went to give it to the girl, but learned she had moved away with relatives. On his way, Kyung-tae was involved in a minor traffic accident, tearing the teddy bear. The camera inside was exposed. Realizing its significance, Kyung-tae removed the memory card, intending to view its contents at home. At that moment, Detective Du appeared behind him. Without a word, he attacked Kyung-tae, attempting to seize the memory card. After a struggle, Kyung-tae was overpowered. Detective Du snatched the memory card and doused the apartment with gasoline, intending to destroy all evidence. At that moment, Suyol had just attended Councilman Du's daughter's birthday party. Sitting in his car, a sudden headache struck him. After getting out, he realized his driver had vanished, replaced by a mysterious figure in a motorcycle helmet standing in front of the car. Suyol and the mystery person had a history, some sort of antagonistic relationship where sparks flew whenever they met. This time was no different. Suyol was knocked out cold. The helmeted figure dragged him to a rooftop house, Kyung-tae's place. The mysterious person wanted Suyol to apologize to Kyung-tae, but Suyol was completely clueless. The mystery person opened the door. A sudden flash of light erupted, throwing both Suyol and the helmeted figure back. Suyol tried to run, but the mysterious figure dragged him back towards the now burning house, insistent on the apology to Kyung-tae. who was currently unconscious. The fire spread rapidly, a gas cylinder threatening to explode. In the nick of time, the mystery person smashed a window. Soo-yeol, clutching Kyung-tae, jumped, landing luckily on top of a car, relatively unharmed. Seconds later, the helmeted figure also leaped from the inferno. In that moment, he resembled a superhero saving the world, coolly patting out the flames on his clothes before removing his helmet. The face revealed was handsome, with a touch of arrogance. His name was K, a complete lunatic, the polar opposite of Soo-yeol. This crazed mystery person, K, Soo-yeol couldn't have imagined that, from this day forward, his fate would be inextricably linked with K's. After the fire, Soo-yeol ended up in the hospital. His injuries were minor, but Kyung-tae was in worse shape, still unconscious. Soo-yeol was desperate to know who K was and why he was so fixated on him. He questioned Kyung-tae's neighbors, but they all claimed there had been no sign of any helmeted figure the previous night. Soo-yeol obsessed over the incident all day. His friend, thinking he was losing it, recommended a therapist. Soo-yeol went for a consultation, but the doctor dismissed it as a hallucination, suggesting a good night's sleep would cure him. Just as Soo-yeol was stewing over this, bad news arrived. Rumors were spreading at the police station that Soo-yeol's relentless investigation into Why-na's disappearance had pressured the innocent Kyung-tae into attempting suicide. Now things were really messed up. Soo-yeol had saved a life, but now he was being vilified by his colleagues. His superiors ordered him to quickly contain the damage. Otherwise, given the current public sentiment, his hopes of a promotion would vanish. Soo-yeol hadn't wanted to get involved, but now, for the sake of his own future, he had to uncover the truth. The key to Why-na's disappearance seemed to lie with Kyung-tae. According to his phone records, he'd gone to Why-na's house the previous day, suggesting he hadn't given up on investigating her case. But hadn't the police said Why-na's credit card had been used recently? His colleagues claimed the card was stolen, and that Why-na hadn't been the one using it. This implied that Why-na might have actually been harmed. Soo-yeol visited Why-na's former apartment, but the place had been completely renovated, leaving no trace of anything. In the bathroom, a flash of memory hit him, the image of invisible bloodstains and his struggle with the mysterious figure the night before. Soo-yeol's head throbbed. He asked his colleagues to retrieve the building's security footage. It was the only lead they had. Leaving the building, he noticed a missing person poster on a telephone pole. It was Why-na's daughter, searching for her missing mother. Soo-yeol bought her some ice cream. Looking at her innocent face, his heart melted. Back at the station, Soo-yeol threw himself into Why-na's case. His colleagues reviewed the security footage from near the apartment building and discovered a clue: a vehicle with a chimney protruding from its roof. Soo-yeol immediately recognized something was amiss. A chimney on a vehicle suggested an incinerator inside. His instincts told him this was connected to Why-na's disappearance. Tracing the vehicle's route, Soo-yeol located its final destination. A nearby house was still occupied. It seemed to belong to a gangster, but when Soo-yeol tried to question him, the man slipped away. Unable to catch him, Soo-yeol smashed the vehicle's window. Just as he suspected, there was an incinerator inside. He took the ashes to the lab for analysis. The results revealed human bone fragments. The perpetrator had used the incinerator to destroy evidence. A DNA test would confirm whether the remains were Why-na's. Soo-yeol contacted Why-na's brother to obtain a DNA sample for comparison. The results came back quickly. The ashes were indeed Why-na's. Finally, Soo-yeol understood. Kyung-tae's suspicions had been correct. Just then, something occurred to Soo-yeol. Kyung-tae's neighbor had mentioned a delivery guy in the vicinity that night. Delivery helmets typically have cameras attached. Soo-yeol immediately rushed to the food delivery place. And there it was. Footage from the delivery driver's helmet camera revealed a crucial clue. The person captured on film was Officer Do. What a coincidence. What was Officer Do doing near Kyung-tae's house that night? Suspicion gnawed at Soo-yeol. He was certain Officer Do was involved in Why-na's death and had tried to eliminate Kyung-tae because he was getting too close to the truth. The fire must have been Officer Do's doing. Having reached this conclusion, Soo-yeol rushed to make an arrest. To his surprise, Officer Do didn't react with panic, but instead revealed a shocking piece of information. Apparently, a knife had been found under Kyung-tae's water dispenser. It bore Kyung-tae's fingerprints and Wai-na's blood. Kyung-tae was now the prime suspect in her murder. Soo-yeol refused to believe it. He suspected Officer Do had framed him. He was right. Officer Do had secretly obtained Kyung-tae's fingerprints and planted the blood-stained knife. Soo-yeol reported his suspicions to his superiors, but they told him Councilman Do had already called. He claimed that he and Kyung-tae had been together the entire night Wai-na disappeared. Soo-yeol was stunned. His superior then showed him some paperwork. Soo-yeol's promotion had already been pre-approved. He was ordered to stop stirring up trouble and jeopardizing his future. For the sake of his career, Soo-yeol chose to remain silent. News of Kyung-tae's alleged involvement in Wai-na's murder spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, Officer Do was cleared of any suspicion. Councilman Do, his cousin, benefited greatly, gaining immense public support in his election campaign, and Soo-yeol smoothly ascended to the position of head of the anti-corruption unit. Only Wai-na's daughter, putting on a brave face, sat alone at the memorial service. Despite his promotion, Soo-yeol couldn't bring himself to smile. That evening, his colleague Hee-jom visited him. Hee-jom was not only Soo-yeol's colleague, but also his ex-girlfriend of 2 years. She reminded him that Kyung-tae and Wai-na didn't know each other, had never even met. Where was the motive? Furthermore, Hee-jom shared a vital piece of information. She was an informant for a narcotics officer at the station. That officer had been murdered a few days before Wai-na's death. Was it just a coincidence? Hee-jom suspected the case was more than a simple murder. She had recently met with the deceased officer's other informants. One of them revealed the officer had planted a camera in Wai-na's necklace to gather information. Hee-jom believed that finding the necklace could lead to crucial evidence. But Soo-yeol was losing his patience. He had his promotion. He didn't want to get dragged back into this mess. He dismissed Hee-jom and drove home. Her words, however, continued to echo in his mind. Just then, the elevator in his building stalled. Unable to contact building management, and with his phone losing signal, Soo-yeol frantically pounded on the elevator doors. Moments later, someone pried the doors open. It was the mysterious Kay. But instead of helping Soo-yeol out, Kay jumped inside, danced around erratically, and then kicked the elevator, sending it plummeting downwards. When Soo-yeol opened his eyes, he found himself hurtling backward. He turned to see Kay driving him on a motorcycle. Kay, reckless as a madman, weaved through a shopping mall, burst onto the street, and accelerated. Soo-yeol was about to lose his mind. What the hell is this guy doing? Finally, Kay's motorcycle screeched to a halt. Soo-yeol recognized the location. Wasn't this where he had chased the burnt-out vehicle a few days ago? He had tried to question the gangster there, but the man had fled. Thinking back, he must have known something. Indeed, a few days prior, Officer Do had paid off those thugs to leave town. But these goons hadn't listened. They had returned to their hideout. Before Soo-yeol could understand what was happening, Kay dragged him into a house. He wanted Soo-yeol to force a group of thugs, the Bao-se, to reveal details of a case. Naturally, they refused. Kay resorted to force. The Bao-se surrounded Kay. Taking advantage of the chaos, Soo-yeol found a chest of jewelry. Inside, a necklace caught his eye. Wai-na's necklace. He quickly snatched it. Meanwhile, Kay was fighting back fiercely. He landed on an oil drum, covering himself in black grime, and yelled, "Awesome!" The thugs, intimidated, kept their distance. Kay seized the opportunity and took them all down. By the time Kay had completely defeated the Bao-se, Soo-yeol had slipped away. Back home, he removed a memory card from the necklace. Sure enough, it contained a video. Soo-yeol watched in disbelief as it revealed Assemblyman Do turning Wai-na into gold. This truth left Soo-yeol paralyzed with indecision. After some thought, he decided to mind his own business. After all, this involved his future. But as Soo-yeol was about to throw the necklace away, Kay appeared and snatched it. Soo-yeol was furious. Kay, as usual, just pranced around, seemingly teasing him. Soo-yeol, exasperated, demanded to know who Kay was. Kay burst out laughing, declaring himself the ultimate hero of this era, dedicated to dealing with irredeemable villains. Soo-yeol was bewildered. Kay just laughed again and jumped into a lake. Soo-yeol looked into the water. There was no one there. The next day, Assemblyman Do, having won the election, invited the police officers and the hero, Soo-yeol, to a celebratory dinner. Soo-yeol, fully aware that Do was a murderer, played along, acting subservient. Just as he was leaving, a sharp pain shot through his head. At that very moment, Kay appeared. This time, without a word, Kay charged toward Assemblyman Do. He leaped into the air and delivered a powerful double kick to Do's chest. In that instant, Soo-yeol understood. He and Kay were the same person. More accurately, Kay was another personality residing within him. Rescuing Kyeon-tae, searching Why-na's house, fighting the thugs, all of it had been the work of this other personality. If Soo-yeol was a morally ambiguous opportunist, Kay was the passionate, justice-seeking madman within him. He wanted to use his fists to strike a blow against this corrupt world. Kay continued to assault Do, repeatedly dunking him in a nearby pond, screaming that he was a murderer. By the time people pulled him off, Soo-yeol realized what he had done. Not far away, Kay stood, a mocking expression on his face. Soo-yeol chased after him, tackling him to the ground. But when he looked closely, the person in handcuffs was himself. This time, it truly sunk in, he and Kay were one and the same. Now he was in deep trouble. Assemblyman Do had a target on his back. To protect his future, Soo-yeol had to suppress this unruly personality within him. He sought help from a psychiatrist, hoping to cure his multiple personality disorder. The doctor hypnotized him. Under hypnosis, Soo-yeol's mind descended into a deep level of consciousness. A frightened boy appeared, running desperately through a dark landscape within his mind. But before he could understand the meaning of this vision, he woke up. The doctor prescribed medication and taught him self-hypnosis techniques to combat his alternate personality. At first, it seemed to work. One pill, one mental mantra, and Kay would vanish. Unfortunately, the medication couldn't be taken in large doses, and the self-hypnosis wasn't always effective. The end result was far from ideal. Kay continued to appear beside Soo-yeol at random times. Only when Soo-yeol drifted into a deep sleep would Kay disappear. The next day, his colleague Kim and his ex-girlfriend Hee-jom came to see him. Soo-yeol showed her the video of Assemblyman Do and agreed to help her investigate. To prove Do's guilt, they needed to find the crucial necklace. The proof of Do's murder of Why-na lay within its memory card. Soo-yeol searched every nook and cranny of his apartment, but the necklace was nowhere to be found. Instead, he found a motorcycle helmet locked in his safe, along with pictures from his time with Hee-jom. He remembered. He had thrown the necklace into the lake yesterday. They searched the lake for hours, getting freezing cold, but found nothing. Seeking solace, Soo-yeol went to his mother's shop. By an incredible coincidence, the necklace was around his mother's neck. Soo-yeol felt a wave of relief wash over him. The next day, he showed the video from the memory card to his superiors. Unfortunately, the video was corrupted, making it impossible to confirm that the person filmed was Assemblyman Do. Furthermore, even if it were Do, the video didn't capture the actual act of murder. With Do's powerful connections, this flimsy evidence wouldn't be enough to convict him. Fortunately, thanks to Soo-yeol's silver tongue, his superiors agreed to let him investigate discreetly. With the necklace evidence now useless, the thugs who helped Do dispose of Why-na's body became the only lead. According to his colleagues' investigation, the leader of these thugs was known as the Ghost Boss. This Ghost Boss specialized in discreet transactions, smuggling everything from contraband to disposing of bodies. As long as there was money involved, he'd do anything. Unfortunately, by the time Soo-yeol arrived, the Ghost Boss had vanished. Unable to find the Ghost Boss, Soo-yeol shifted his focus to Assemblyman Do's cousin, Officer Do. Based on the available clues, it seemed certain that the two DOS were in cahoots. They had entrusted the Ghost Boss with disposing of Why-na's body. If he failed, Officer Do would handle it himself. This meant Officer Do was essentially Assemblyman Do's cleanup crew. Soo-yeol tried to convince Officer Do to turn against his cousin, warning him that Do would eventually discard him. But Officer Do was unmoved and ignored Soo-yeol's advice. Unexpectedly, just as the investigation seemed to stall, a new break appeared. It happened to be Soo-yeol's birthday. His older brother had prepared a celebratory meal. Soo-yeol and his brother weren't biologically related. He had been adopted by their mother, who treated him like her own son. Soo-yeol considered both his adoptive mother and brother as family. Suddenly, his brother asked, "What are we going to do with that stuff?" Suyol was confused. His brother explained, referring to the items Suyol had brought home, including the necklace he'd given their mother. Suyol rushed to see what his brother was talking about. His brother revealed a chest filled with jewelry. Suyol's memory clicked into place. He had taken the chest after defeating a group of smugglers. He had initially planned to ask his colleagues to investigate the smugglers' whereabouts. But his brother had another idea. It turned out his brother had connections in the black market. He helped Suyol list the items on a black market website. Now they just had to wait for the smugglers to take the bait. Unfortunately, trouble arrived at their doorstep. While Suyol was investigating Assemblyman Du, Du was investigating him. Du made his move. A prosecutor arrived, wanting to investigate the source of Suyol's income as a police officer. Suyol wasn't entirely clean. He had previously scammed some colleagues, and his earnings weren't entirely legitimate. If Du got hold of this information, he would be ruined. Besides Du, the smugglers were also searching frantically for the chest, just as Suyol had predicted. After a relentless search, they found the items his brother had listed online. Unfortunately, Suyol had been careless. He had thought his brother could help him find the smugglers, but instead, they contacted him directly. They had kidnapped his brother and were holding him hostage, demanding the return of the chest. Suyol quietly went to the address they provided, discreetly contacting his colleagues and asking for backup. Before his colleagues arrived, Suyol was surrounded by thugs. Without a word, they started smashing his car. Cornered, he fled, eventually hiding in a supermarket. The thugs pursued him relentlessly. Overwhelmed and outnumbered, Suyol felt like he was about to break. He desperately wished for Kay to appear and save him. But for once, Kay was nowhere to be found. Suyol used items from the supermarket to fight off a few of the thugs, but he was clearly outmatched. 3 thugs cornered him and quickly brought him down. When Suyol opened his eyes, a familiar face hovered over him. It was Kay. He was saved. Kay calmly finished chewing a mouthful of chips. Then, he picked up a mosquito swatter and, with 2 swift moves, took down the thugs. The remaining thug refused to give up. Kay decisively grabbed a rope and demonstrated a masterful display of rope binding, quickly tying up 2 thugs like sausages. During the struggle, the remaining thug injured Kay's hand. But Kay, undeterred, just laughed maniacally. Just as the thug was about to land a fatal blow, Hee-jom arrived, kicking the attacker away with a single powerful kick. She handcuffed the ghost boss, and the thugs were subdued. Kay disappeared. Suyol was back. His hand was injured. Hee-jom gently bandaged it. Looking at the angelic face of his ex-girlfriend, both Suyol and Kay felt a stirring within them. The police quickly rounded up the Baosei gang of thieves. Suyol began his interrogation, aiming to extract a confession about Councilman Du's crimes from their leader. Thanks to Suyol's persistence, the gang leader spilled everything. Just as Suyol suspected, it was Officer Du who had been hired by Councilman Du to dispose of Y-Na's body. Suyol immediately raced to arrest Officer Du, but he was too late. Officer Du had been taken care of, murdered by Councilman Du to silence him. Councilman Du then approached the drug dealers he had been working with. He promised to set up a legitimate company for them so they could openly sell their narcotics. In return, they had to eliminate Officer Du. He couldn't risk Officer Du leading investigators back to him. With the key witness, Officer Du, now dead, the dangers began to escalate. Prosecutors suddenly arrived at Suyol's office, confiscating his files and documents for review. They also raided his mother's shop, seizing all her financial records. Suyol knew this was Councilman Du's doing. As expected, Councilman Du called him. Following his instructions, Suyol went to an underground nightclub, a place of extravagant opulence. Councilman Du had shed his usual gentlemanly facade. Upon seeing him, Suyol groveled, begging for forgiveness, taking all the blame, and pleading with Councilman Du to show mercy. The necklace, the indirect evidence linking Councilman Du to the crime, was now back in his possession. Suyol had no choice but to abase himself before the councilman. Councilman Du hinted that he wanted Suyol to resign from the police force. Suyol was reluctant, but powerless against the councilman's influence. He drank the liquor offered by Councilman Du and meekly agreed to resign. Councilman Du had won this battle. But that wasn't enough. Councilman Du continued to taunt Su-yeol. He produced a recording of Wai-na before she was murdered. Filmed the night before her daughter's birthday, it was filled with a mother's love and blessings for her child. Watching this heartwarming video, Su-yeol thought of Wai-na's daughter. Her innocent face and resolute eyes filled him with shame. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was Kyung-tae. After days in a coma, Kyung-tae had awakened. His voice was urgent, saying he was being chased and begging Su-yeol for help. It seemed all avenues were closed for Su-yeol. But Kyung-tae, who had been deeply investigating the case, might be the only one who could bring Councilman Du to justice. Rewinding a few hours before Officer Du's death, Officer Du, tasked by his cousin with dealing with the troublesome Kyung-tae, had intended to kill him. However, Kyung-tae managed to escape. He hid in Officer Du's car and ambushed him, forcing him to reveal Wai-na's killer. Surprisingly, Officer Du didn't resist. He readily admitted that Councilman Du was responsible. He even produced a recording pen containing an argument between himself and Councilman Du. It turned out that Officer Du's incompetence had angered the councilman. To protect himself, Officer Du had recorded their dispute, which included details about Wai-na's murder. Upon obtaining the recording, Kyung-tae immediately contacted Su-yeol. Only Su-yeol could help him catch this devil. With Su-yeol's aid, Kyung-tae reached a safe house. He told Su-yeol about the recording. However, the recording didn't explicitly state that Councilman Du had personally killed Wai-na. It couldn't serve as direct evidence. The image of himself groveling before Councilman Du flashed through Su-yeol's mind. He hated it, but the councilman held all the cards. What could he do? From this point on, the situation changed dramatically. That evening, Councilman Du led a group of men to Kyung-tae's hideout. To Kyung-tae's shock, Su-yeol was leading them. Kyung-tae instantly realized he'd been betrayed. He confronted Councilman Du about the murder, but the councilman was cunning. He denied knowing Wai-na. Furthermore, Su-yeol found the recording pen on Kyung-tae. It was over. Councilman Du had nothing to fear. This persistent Kyung-tae was a nuisance that needed to be taught a lesson. Su-yeol handed Councilman Du a golf club, which he used to brutally beat Kyung-tae. Despite the savage assault, Kyung-tae continued to accuse Councilman Du of the murder. Su-yeol, filled with shame, didn't intervene. Finally, driven to a frenzy by Kyung-tae's accusations, Councilman Du blurted out a confession. At that moment, Su-yeol sprang into action, kicking Councilman Du away. It had all been an elaborate act, a plan concocted by Su-yeol and Kyung-tae. They needed to pressure Councilman Du into admitting his guilt. Now, with the confession secured, a miniature recorder hidden in Su-yeol's clothing captured irrefutable proof of Councilman Du's crime. As Su-yeol moved to arrest the councilman, another man burst in, the drug dealer who was in league with Councilman Du. He helped the councilman escape. Su-yeol gave chase, but the drug dealer overpowered him. Just then, Kay appeared. Kay's fighting prowess was unmatched. With a few swift moves, he subdued the drug dealer. Councilman Du was finally apprehended, and the injured Kyung-tae was taken to the hospital. Some time later, Kyung-tae was discharged from the hospital. He and Su-yeol visited Wai-na's daughter, bringing a sense of justice to the motherless child. Su-yeol became a hero at the police station. But his main concern wasn't his newfound fame, it was the earlier investigation by the prosecutors. His personal finances were far from clean. To his astonishment, the prosecution informed him that all the money in his account had been donated to a youth center. Stunned, Su-yeol checked his balance. His account was empty. Su-yeol was devastated. That money represented years of painstaking savings. He knew Kay was responsible. He rushed to the youth center, demanding his money back. But donations are non-refundable. Furious, Su-yeol even faked a suicide attempt, banging his head against a railing, trying to force Kay to emerge. He needed to confront him. Finally, Kay appeared. Before Su-yeol could unleash his fury, Kay launched into a self-righteous speech. He had done a good deed for the young sprouts, the future of the nation. Su-yeol should be proud. Why the youth center? Su-yeol demanded. Kay paused. Why, indeed, had he fixated on that particular place? Su-yeol, still reeling from the shock, threatened. I'll jump. If I die, you die too. This charade ends. Kay remained unfazed. He knew Su-yeol was a coward, incapable of jumping. Moreover, he knew the money was dirty, obtained through Soo-yeol's subservience to the powerful. He urged Soo-yeol to come to his senses and remember his duty as a police officer. Soo-yeol was at his wit's end. He couldn't even afford his rent. Humiliated, he moved out of his upscale apartment and into his foster mother's home. Living with his mother and brother was the least of his worries. He now had to endure Kay's constant presence. From that day on, Kay was like an unshakable shadow. He was there all day, every day, at home, at work, even in the shower. Soo-yeol was going insane. He had no privacy left, even though his constant companion was another version of himself. Desperate to regain some control, Soo-yeol devised a plan. He proposed a schedule to Kay. You have the body during the day, and I have it at night. 12 hours each. No interference. You can even use your time to catch criminals. To convince Kay, Soo-yeol even had tiny cameras installed in his watch, allowing Kay to monitor his every move. Finally, Kay agreed. But Kay had barely agreed when Soo-yeol quietly slipped off his watch. His shift wasn't over yet, so Soo-yeol figured he could let loose a little. He planned to use his position to make some easy money. Soo-yeol went to a private nightclub owned by a former detective who had resigned after taking a hefty bribe. Soo-yeol had helped smooth things over for him back then. This time, Soo-yeol brought up the past incident, subtly threatening to expose him unless he received a payoff. The nightclub owner, a shrewd man, immediately produced 2 envelopes of cash for Soo-yeol. Soo-yeol was elated, but his joy was short-lived. Kay appeared, not only trashing the club but also confiscating the owner's bribe ledger, finally tossing back the 2 envelopes of cash Soo-yeol had just acquired. Utterly devastated by Kay's actions, Soo-yeol sought help from a psychiatrist. The doctor informed him that this situation indicated the 2 personalities within him were becoming increasingly distinct. If this continued, not only would his physical body be exhausted and unable to cope, but his primary personality would weaken while Kay's grew stronger. Eventually, Kay would completely take over. Soo-yeol was terrified, but the situation didn't improve. Every night, Kay would awaken, and every time Kay emerged, he'd show up at his ex-girlfriend's doorstep, embarrassed, clutching a bouquet of flowers. They had broken up, but perhaps even Soo-yeol hadn't realized how deeply he still loved Hee-jeom. However, neither Kay nor Soo-yeol knew that their beloved Hee-jeom was about to face serious danger. Although Councilman Do had been imprisoned for assault, the case was far from over. Hee-jeom, part of the police department's narcotics unit, had discovered that Councilman Do not only assaulted Wai-na, but also used drugs. Moreover, the drugs found in his home were a new kind. Manufacturing and distributing this new drug was a recently emerged criminal organization, and taking them down was the primary objective of the narcotics unit and Hee-jeom. Previously, a fellow officer had been murdered while investigating Councilman Do. Hee-jeom intended to use that case as a starting point for the current drug investigation. For now, their only lead was Councilman Do. If he talked, they could bring down the entire organization. Predictably, Councilman Do refused to cooperate. Hee-jeom's investigation stalled. Though imprisoned, the councilman, proving an old dog can still learn new tricks, hired a lawyer and planned to buy his way out. In reality, Councilman Do used his lawyer's phone to contact the drug traffickers. They were now in this together. He was waiting for them to get him out. Unfortunately for Councilman Do, his plan backfired. The next day, a fellow inmate attacked him repeatedly with a pen. Only the timely intervention of a guard saved his life. After regaining consciousness, Councilman Do claimed the traffickers were trying to kill him. He declared that if the police guaranteed his safety, he would cooperate with the investigation. Councilman Do became the key to cracking the case. Fearing further attempts on his life, Hee-jeom suggested transferring him to another prison that night. Her superiors agreed. That night, Hee-jeom and her colleagues oversaw the transfer. Midway through the journey, a truck rammed their vehicle. The prison transport van flipped, injuring everyone inside. A man then broke into the overturned van and eliminated Councilman Do and Hee-jeom's colleagues. But for some unknown reason, he spared Hee-jeom. This made her a suspect, and her superiors placed her under investigation. Just then, Kay reappeared. Deeply worried about Hee-jeom, he insisted on her innocence. For the woman he loved, Kay made a deal with Soo-yeol, clear Hee-jeom's name, and he would disappear forever. Soo-yeol agreed to K's terms. In that moment, he swore he would save Hee-jom. He volunteered to lead the investigation into her case. The investigation centered on how the transfer information had been leaked. The transfer plan and route were highly classified, known only to a select few. Soo-yeol suspected someone within Hee-jom's own narcotics unit. This lead proved difficult to pursue. Fortunately, there was a witness that night. However, the only available photo showed a man, but his face was obscured. Then, K noticed something, a distinctive bracelet on the witness's wrist, the kind exclusive to a particular nightclub. Using this clue, Soo-yeol obtained the nightclub's guest list and targeted a particular young man. However, no matter how much Soo-yeol pressed him, the young man insisted he hadn't seen anything. Just then, K emerged again, grabbing the man by the collar and ready to throw a punch. Luckily, Hee-jom intervened. Great. K always showed up at the worst possible time. Soo-yeol was furious at this persistent, leech-like persona. Determined to get rid of K once and for all, Soo-yeol returned to the psychiatrist. The doctor suggested that his multiple personalities might be linked to a childhood trauma. To cure it, they needed to revisit the source. So, the psychiatrist hypnotized Soo-yeol. Under hypnosis, Soo-yeol saw a corridor with several doors and a frightened young boy running. Before he could get a clear look, he woke up. With his subconscious still unclear, Soo-yeol had to continue enduring K. Meanwhile, the case reached a standstill. Then, a group of officers arrived at Hee-jom's apartment. They claimed to be responding to a burglary report, but during their search, they discovered a bag of white powder. This was a serious problem. As the lead investigator on the case, Soo-yeol was forced to arrest Hee-jom. With no other choice, Soo-yeol handcuffed the woman he loved. Hee-jom knew she was being framed. Whoever had spared her life during the attack clearly intended for her to take the fall. Crucially, only someone who knew her well could have framed her. That narrowed the suspects down to her own narcotics unit. But who? Hee-jom couldn't imagine. They were like family. She was hoping her captain would help clear her name. But Hee-jom was wrong, devastatingly wrong. The mastermind behind everything was her most trusted superior, Captain Kim of the narcotics unit. Captain Kim was protecting Councilman Do's drug operation. He had a loyal accomplice in Officer Jong-gu. Together, they had committed countless crimes. Furthermore, Captain Kim was connected to the new drug organization, using a blind drug dealer named Isu as an intermediary. Isu was a wanted man. Captain Kim offered him protection in exchange for assassinating Councilman Do, silencing him permanently. He then relayed the transfer time and route to Officer Jong-gu. Additionally, Captain Kim had ordered Yu to steal drugs from a major drug lord, the new kind, worth a fortune. But drug lords weren't to be trifled with. They would relentlessly hunt down the thief. To avoid detection and frame Hee-jom, they planted a small amount of the stolen drugs in her apartment. Back with Soo-yeol, his only hope now rested with the witness. He approached the young man again, but he remained stubbornly silent. At this critical juncture, the hot-headed K resurfaced, chasing after the fleeing witness. Just then, Soo-yeol's phone rang. It was Kyung-tae. A few days prior, due to his excellent work on the Councilman Do case, Kyung-tae had been transferred to Soo-yeol's anti-corruption unit, becoming his subordinate. Kyung-tae had uncovered a crucial piece of evidence. On the night of the incident, an ambulance with fake license plates had been spotted at the scene. After hanging up, Soo-yeol explained the gravity of the situation to the witness. Finally, the young man confessed what he had seen that night. He had witnessed the attack and seen the suspect get into the ambulance. So, the ambulance was definitely involved. Soo-yeol instructed Kyung-tae to track its movements. Kyung-tae quickly located the ambulance. It was now in a junkyard. Moreover, it had deliberately avoided security cameras on its way there, making it difficult to trace its owner. At this point, Kyung-tae had a brilliant idea. The junkyard must still have dashcam footage from the vehicles inside. With dashcam footage, the case would be much easier to solve. As expected, the dashcam footage captured the car owner's appearance. It was that drug dealer, Isu. And here's the problem: Isu had disappeared without a trace. At this critical juncture, Kyung-tae's intelligence came into play. He deduced that they'd used a truck to hit the victim and an ambulance as a getaway vehicle, possibly connected to a vehicle management company. To avoid being traced, they might have even recently shut the company down. Sure enough, Kyung-T discovered a vehicle management company that had just closed. Soo-yeol felt like Kyung-T was a godsend. In reality, this company turned out to be just an old parking lot. Soo-yeol rushed out, only to find his car boxed in, unable to open the doors. At that crucial moment, Kei arrived on his motorcycle. Soo-yeol immediately snatched Kei's helmet and dragged him along to the old parking lot. His hunch was right. This place was fishy. Soo-yeol discovered a stash of cocaine. Just then, a group of drug dealers showed up, ready for a fight. Soo-yeol and Kei teamed up, fighting them off. But in a moment of vulnerability, a needle plunged into Soo-yeol's vein. It was Isu. He injected Soo-yeol with something that rendered him unconscious. As Soo-yeol blacked out, so did Kei, his alternate personality. When Soo-yeol came to, he was tied up. Approaching him were Chief Kim and Jong-gu. To protect himself, Jong-gu intended to kill Isu and silence him. But as he pulled the trigger, Chief Kim shot him from behind. It turned out Chief Kim hadn't given up on the lucrative drug trade. Selling this stash would secure his future. So, Chief Kim had made a deal with you. He offered to help you escape prosecution in exchange for stealing the drugs from the cartel boss. The cartel boss was a ruthless woman. She wouldn't tolerate Chief Kim stealing from her so brazenly. Thus, Chief Kim switched sides and partnered with her. From then on, he would use his authority as a police officer to help the cartel expand its market legally, receiving a cut of the profits in return. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. Chief Kim, a cunning man, ordered Isu to kill Jong-gu. To save his own skin, you had no choice but to comply. With Jong-gu gone, there was one less person who knew Chief Kim's secrets. Bound and helpless, Soo-yeol witnessed the entire scene. Having dealt with his subordinate, Chief Kim now turned his attention to another loose end, Soo-yeol. Facing imminent death, Soo-yeol immediately surrendered. He offered to help Chief Kim cover everything up. He would tell his colleagues that Jong-gu and the drug dealer, Yu, had killed each other. Moreover, he was now drugged. If the police station were investigated, he wouldn't escape suspicion either. Chief Kim, convinced, held back. But being the sly fox he was, he demanded Soo-yeol's fingerprints on the syringe. An hour earlier, he had transferred a sum of money into Soo-yeol's brother's account. If Soo-yeol tried anything, the unexplained money and his fingerprints on the syringe would incriminate him. Things were looking grim. Forget helping Hee-jom with her investigation, Soo-yeol couldn't even protect himself. To survive, he had no choice but to obey Chief Kim's orders. When his colleagues arrived, he pinned everything on Jong-gu. He claimed Jong-gu had been dealing with the drug trafficker Isu, and when the deal went sour, Jong-gu tried to eliminate him. The result? One dead, one injured, and Chief Kim simply hadn't arrived in time to save them. Both his colleagues and superiors believed this story, except for Kei. Kei furiously confronted Soo-yeol, demanding to know why he didn't expose Chief Kim. But this time, Soo-yeol refused to budge. He even beat Kei to a pulp, driven by his desperate need to survive. Although evil had triumphed this time, at least Hee-jom's name had been cleared. Soo-yeol visited Hee-jom in jail, filling her in on the situation. Hee-jom casually mentioned an incident from the previous month involving Chief Kim, the same case mentioned at the beginning of the film. At the time, Chief Kim had been pursuing a drug dealer. During the chase, Officer Tak fell to his death. According to Chief Kim's testimony, after discovering Officer Tak's fall, he looked up and saw another officer, Officer Sim, a known drug user. Chief Kim claimed Officer Sim pushed Officer Tak, and then he, Chief Kim, accidentally caused Officer Sim to fall while trying to subdue him. But reviewing the crime scene photos, Soo-yeol noticed Officer Tak's body lying on top of Officer Sim's. This suggested only one explanation. Officer Sim was killed first, then Officer Tak. This meant Chief Kim had lied. Soo-yeol revisited the crime scene, piecing together the clues. He reconstructed the events. Chief Kim was likely making a deal with the drug dealer Isu when Officer Sim stumbled upon them. To silence him, Chief Kim pushed Officer Sim off the building. Then, Officer Tak arrived and discovered Chief Kim. To eliminate this second witness, Chief Kim killed Officer Tak as well. He then shot himself in the arm to stage the scene, making it look like Officer Sim had attacked his colleague. and he, Chief Kim, had been injured while intervening. With this deduction, Soo-yeol felt a surge of confidence. Perhaps he could use this to bring down Chief Kim. Just then, Kay reappeared. If they were going to take down Chief Kim, they'd need his help too. And so, Soo-yeol and Kay formed a righteous alliance once more. They began to formulate a plan for a powerful counterattack. Chief Kim was a cunning adversary. Catching him wouldn't be easy. But Soo-yeol had made a crucial discovery. The previous month, Chief Kim and his subordinate, Officer Tak, had been pursuing drug dealer Sim Sang-ho. Both Officer Tak and Sim Sang-ho ended up falling to their deaths. Chief Kim claimed Sim Sang-ho had killed Officer Tak, and that he, in the process of apprehending Sim Sang-ho, had accidentally shot him in the leg, causing him to fall. But connecting the dots, Soo-yeol realized it was likely Chief Kim who had killed both Officer Tak and Sim Sang-ho because they had uncovered his connection to the drug trade. Soo-yeol and Kay planned to use this as leverage to finally bring Chief Kim to justice. At that moment, Kay brought up something. 2 months prior, Soo-yeol had received a call from an unknown number. The man on the other end claimed that Officer Tak's death wasn't orchestrated by Sim Sang-ho and that he had proof. Kay's reminder made Soo-yeol realize that this mysterious man might be the key to cracking the case. First, they had to find him. Soo-yeol and Kay got to work, visiting Sim Sang-ho's house to search for clues. Eventually, they found a therapy card from a rehabilitation center. Upon arriving at the center, a nurse informed Soo-yeol that Sim Sang-ho had frequently brought a drug user named Hyuk-jin there. The two were quite close, and Hyuk-jin often frequented a junkyard. Soo-yeol and Kay immediately headed there, hoping this Hyuk-jin was the mystery caller. Sure enough, there was something shady about the junkyard. It was teeming with addicts and drug dealers. To infiltrate the place, Soo-yeol even disguised himself as a user. Luckily, he passed muster and finally located Hyuk-jin. It seemed Soo-yeol had finally found a lead. While Sim Sang-ho had been a drug addict, he had successfully gotten clean with the help of the police. Afterward, he often helped Hyuk-jin with his own addiction. Around that time, Sim Sang-ho planned to turn over a new leaf and report Chief Kim's collusion with drug traffickers to the authorities. To protect himself, Hyuk-jin betrayed Sim Sang-ho, informing Chief Kim about his plan. This led to Sim Sang-ho's elimination to silence him. However, Hyuk-jin insisted that he hadn't made the anonymous call to Soo-yeol. Soo-yeol pressed for more information, but Hyuk-jin was mentally unable to continue. Soo-yeol had to leave him in the care of a psychiatrist. Hyuk-jin's words confirmed Soo-yeol's suspicions, but they still lacked concrete evidence against Chief Kim. Worse, Chief Kim was tightening the noose. Because Soo-yeol was digging too deep, the chief decided to teach him a lesson. The person Soo-yeol cared about most was his ex-girlfriend, Hee-jom. Chief Kim forced Isu, a drug dealer already in custody, to falsely testify that Hee-jom was involved in drug trafficking. She was framed for the murder of Councilman Do and conspiracy with drug dealers. He also ordered a female inmate to threaten Hee-jom, slashing her throat. Upon learning this, Soo-yeol rushed to confront Chief Kim, demanding to know why he was hurting Hee-jom. The chief made it clear, if Soo-yeol dropped the investigation, Hee-jom would be spared. This time, Soo-yeol wouldn't back down. If anything happened to Hee-jom, he would make Chief Kim pay. While Soo-yeol was frantic with worry, Kyung-tae made a major breakthrough. A few days earlier, to frame Hee-jom, Chief Kim and his subordinate, Jong-gu, had planted a stash of drugs in her house. Jong-gu also stole some valuables, including her gold medal from a sporting event. Kyung-tae figured Jong-gu wouldn't have had time to hide the stolen goods anywhere but his car. He searched Jong-gu's vehicle and found Hee-jom's gold medal, proving Jong-gu was the one who broke into her house and, by extension, the one who planted the drugs. This cleared Hee-jom's name. A few days later, she was released from prison. Soo-yeol and Kay went to pick her up. While Hee-jom was wrongly imprisoned, Kay had even written her a heartfelt love letter. Halfway through the drive, Hee-jom was still confused about the case. Soo-yeol couldn't hold back any longer and revealed the truth. Chief Kim, the man Hee-jom trusted most, wasn't just protecting drug traffickers. He was the one who eliminated her colleague, the man she considered family. He was the one who killed Officer Tak. But Hee-jom refused to believe it. She held Chief Kim in such high regard. After dropping Hee-jom off at home, The psychiatrist called Soo-yeol to inform him that Hyuk-jin had escaped. Soon after, Soo-yeol received a call from Hyuk-jin himself. He claimed to know the identity of the anonymous caller, someone who definitely had proof of Sim Sang-hoo's innocence. He was going to confirm it with this person. Sim Sang-hoo had helped him many times and he owed him a debt. He couldn't stand by and watch his benefactor be wrongly accused. Soo-yeol was frantic. Hyuk-jin was in danger and likely being targeted. His fears were confirmed. When Soo-yeol found Hyuk-jin again, he was already dead. The preliminary investigation concluded it was a suicide, but Soo-yeol refused to believe it. By investigating Hyuk-jin's phone records, Soo-yeol discovered that the only person Hyuk-jin contacted that night, besides Soo-yeol himself, was another officer Chang-ki. Coincidentally, Chang-ki also worked under Chief Kim. At this point, Soo-yeol was almost certain that Chang-ki was the mysterious caller from the previous month. Soo-yeol confronted Chang-ki, and after a brief exchange, Chang-ki admitted to making the call. However, he denied killing Hyuk-jin. Soo-yeol forced Chang-ki to make a choice: continue down the wrong path with Chief Kim or turn over a new leaf and provide the evidence related to Officer Tak's death. Caught in this dilemma, Chang-ki unwittingly became the linchpin of the entire situation. That evening, he went to a bar to drown his sorrows, a place that held memories of him and Officer Tak. Although Chang-ki was involved with Chief Kim, he still had a conscience. Officer Tak had been kind to him in the past. Remembering this kindness, Chang-ki wanted to reveal the truth to Soo-yeol. Unfortunately, at the time, Soo-yeol hadn't taken him seriously. Now, recalling Officer Tak's generosity, Chang-ki finally decided to call Soo-yeol. If Soo-yeol could guarantee Chief Kim's arrest, he would hand over the evidence. They agreed to meet an hour later at Officer Tak's memorial. But Chang-ki didn't realize he was already being watched. The drug cartel was targeting him. Simultaneously, the drug lord realized that Soo-yeol posed a threat to her operation. To protect her interests, she ordered her men to tail him. They had seen Soo-yeol meeting with Hyuk-jin, who had then arranged a meeting with Chang-ki. Wanting to protect himself, Chang-ki not only refused to hand over the evidence, but also told Hyuk-jin to stay away from him. But the drug lord's men had other plans. To prevent Hyuk-jin from causing further trouble, they silenced him. Furthermore, they had photographed Soo-yeol confronting Chang-ki and demanding the evidence. The drug lord immediately informed Chief Kim. Realizing the danger, Chief Kim knew he had to destroy the evidence in Chang-ki's possession. It was irrefutable proof of his involvement in the deaths of Officer Tak and Sim Sang-hoo. Before Soo-yeol could reach Chang-ki, Chief Kim arrived. He coerced Chang-ki into handing over the evidence. Chang-ki initially resisted, but he couldn't withstand Chief Kim's ruthlessness and finally relented. The evidence was a video. It turned out that Chang-ki had been present when Chief Kim murdered Officer Tak and Sim Sang-hoo and had filmed the entire ordeal. It was damning evidence. Chang-ki pleaded for mercy, begging Chief Kim to spare him. But Chief Kim was unmoved. At that critical moment, Soo-yeol and Kei arrived. Justice prevailed. Together, they overpowered Chief Kim, and Soo-yeol secured the video evidence. Just when they thought it was over, Chief Kim revealed his trump card, Hee-jeom. A few days earlier, Hee-jeom had confronted Chief Kim. It wasn't that she didn't believe Soo-yeol, but that she couldn't bring herself to believe it. However, the mounting evidence left her with no other choice. She asked Chief Kim, "Why did you do it?" He didn't deny it. His answer was brutally honest. For money. It's that simple. Now that Hee-jeom knew the truth, Chief Kim couldn't let her live. Before going to meet Chang-ki, he had ordered an attack on Hee-jeom. At that moment, Hee-jeom was at the junkyard, waiting to be killed. If Soo-yeol continued to tangle with them, Hee-jeom would be eliminated. While Soo-yeol hesitated, Chang-ki suddenly attacked him from behind. If Soo-yeol couldn't bring Chief Kim to justice, why drag him down with him? Soo-yeol was injured. Chief Kim seized the opportunity to smash his phone. The only evidence was gone. Soo-yeol quickly regained his senses and ran to the junkyard. He had to save his woman. She was trapped inside a cargo container. Smoke filled the container, and Hee-jeom was unconscious. Soo-yeol rushed to save her, only to be trapped inside the container himself. Smoke billowed around them. Soo-yeol was starting to lose consciousness. At the critical moment, Kei appeared like a hero. He kicked the container door, determined to rescue the one he loved. Soo-yeol gradually regained consciousness. For Hee-jom, he and Kay joined forces, desperately hitting the door. Halfway through, Hee-jom woke up. The three of them worked together to escape. Finally, the container door gave way, and they were saved. Not only that, but Soo-yeol also pressured the drug dealer for the container's destination. Just then, Soo-yeol's colleagues and Kyung-tae, following a lead, found the container. They joined forces and apprehended the drug dealers in the swamp. Back with his colleagues, Soo-yeol decisively shared all the drug trafficking intelligence he had. With his colleagues' help, perhaps the situation would improve. But for now, the evidence against Chief Kim the traitor was destroyed, and the drug ring's leadership remained elusive. How could they dismantle such a large drug organization? Just then, Hee-jom remembered something. A few days earlier, she'd obtained a lead through an informant. The drugs this organization was selling were imported from Russia. Currently, the quantity circulating in South Korea was limited. The only place where this type of drug circulated in South Korea was the area formerly managed by Councilman Do. Before Councilman Do's arrest, he had held a budget meeting with some young men. A man photographed at that meeting was the same person seen with Councilman Do before his arrest. This man's name was Andre. It seemed highly likely he was connected to the drug organization. Soo-yeol and Hee-jom suspected Andre might be a high-ranking member of the drug organization, a collaborator with Chief Kim. They had to find Andre. He was the only breakthrough point to dismantle the drug organization. According to Hee-jom's investigation, Andre had frequently appeared at a certain location, so Soo-yeol immediately took action. Coincidentally, on the way, Soo-yeol encountered one of Andre's subordinates. He had seen this man during the period before Councilman Do's arrest. Soo-yeol followed the subordinate to a warehouse and saw a group of people loading something into a cargo container. Andre was among them. At this moment, Kay appeared again. To avoid detection, Kay pulled Soo-yeol into the container. Soo-yeol was going crazy. He had just escaped from a container, and now he was back in one. But it turned out Kay wasn't wrong this time. Each crate inside the container was filled with the latest type of drug. Soo-yeol understood. This warehouse was the distribution point for the drug traffickers. Soo-yeol immediately contacted his colleagues. Under the cover of darkness, his colleagues raided the warehouse. Caught off guard, the drug dealers panicked and were apprehended, including Andre, who still fiercely resisted. All the drugs in the warehouse were seized. As soon as Andre was captured, Soo-yeol immediately interrogated him. He wanted Andre to reveal the organization's biggest boss. But Andre was stubborn, refusing to say a word. Soo-yeol's investigation stalled. And that wasn't all. Just then, Chief Kim arrived. Without any evidence against him, he calmly walked in and out of the police station as if nothing had happened. He even brazenly took Andre away, claiming he was a suspect their narcotics unit had been tracking. Soo-yeol was anxious. Chief Kim was clearly protecting Andre. But Chief Kim showed no fear because Soo-yeol had no evidence. However, in reality, Chief Kim wasn't safe either. After being tormented by Soo-yeol, the drug organization not only lost a group of subordinates, but also a significant amount of drugs. So, the drug lord came to Chief Kim, demanding he compensate her for the losses. Chief Kim understood the drug lord's intention. She clearly wanted him to steal the drugs seized by the police. Chief Kim was dissatisfied. But at this point, he had no choice but to continue. Under the cover of night, Chief Kim and Chanki drove to the confiscated warehouse. Hee-jom, sensing their movements, quietly followed. Chief Kim quickly finished his work, clearing out all the seized drugs. As he was about to leave, Hee-jom appeared, gun drawn, ordering him to surrender. But Chief Kim turned his gun on Chanki. It was a standoff. Whoever was faster would survive. Faced with Chanki's life being in danger, Hee-jom couldn't pull the trigger. Chief Kim escaped. Fortunately, Hee-jom had alerted Soo-yeol, who immediately began pursuing Chief Kim. Knowing he was in serious trouble, Chief Kim focused on escaping. He contacted the drug lord, demanding cash and a passport. Otherwise, she wouldn't get any of the drugs. Quickly, the drug lord ordered her men to deliver the cash and passport to Chief Kim's specified location, an abandoned building, the place where Chief Kim laundered money. It was also the place where everything had begun. Chief Kim wanted a simultaneous exchange of goods and money. But the drug lord ordered her men to eliminate him. She didn't trust the greedy man. Chief Kim was in a precarious situation. She wanted to resolve this problem quickly. But she underestimated Chief Kim. Seeing their intent, he set fire to the drugs. Just then, Soo-yeol arrived. Chief Kim fled into the building, with Soo-yeol hot on his heels. Chief Kim didn't hesitate to fire. He thought he had Soo-yeol, but Soo-yeol was wearing a bulletproof vest. Now it was Soo-yeol's turn to retaliate. With a few moves, he subdued Chief Kim. Hee-jom arrived quickly. Without hesitation, she aimed her gun at Chief Kim. Chief Kim, cornered and about to fall from the building, clung to the bag of cash. Soo-yeol and Hee-jom pulled him back, scattering the money everywhere. At that moment, only despair filled his eyes. He had wasted his life, driven to this point for something he could never truly grasp. And so, Chief Kim was arrested. Only then did Kay appear. Soo-yeol frantically asked, "Where were you, Kay? Why didn't you come help me?" Kay told Soo-yeol that he had been there all along. It's just that Soo-yeol had become very capable on his own. Indeed, throughout this journey, Soo-yeol had changed. He no longer craved fame and fortune, no longer willing to fall into corruption. He was now filled with passion and justice. Wasn't he now, Kay? Soo-yeol pondered this. He turned to see Hee-jom sobbing. Although Chief Kim was a criminal, he was also the superior she had respected the most. Now, she had arrested him with her own hands. How could she not be upset? Soo-yeol embraced Hee-jom, comforting the woman he loved. That night, Soo-yeol took Hee-jom home. She noticed the change in him over the past few days. The Soo-yeol she had truly loved seemed to have returned. Using his injury as an excuse, Hee-jom invited him inside to bandage his wounds. 2 years after their breakup, this was the first time Soo-yeol had stepped inside her home. Even after 2 years, Soo-yeol was still very familiar with the place. He remembered where everything was. Hee-jom retrieved the medicine box. It was filled with medicine Soo-yeol had bought for her. Each box had a note attached, with caring words from Soo-yeol to Hee-jom. Surrounded by familiar objects and memories, Soo-yeol and Hee-jom couldn't hold back any longer. They kissed. They could no longer deny it. They had always deeply loved each other. Love began to blossom anew. The investigation into the case seemed to be gaining momentum. With Chang-ki's testimony, Chief Kim's crimes were finally confirmed, including the murder of his colleague and collusion with a drug trafficking organization. Reaching this point was already a significant breakthrough. Just then, Soo-yeol's superiors ordered him to undergo a reassessment regarding the forced drug injection he had previously endured. While there was evidence proving he was coerced, confirmation was still needed to determine if his current state allowed him to perform his duties effectively. A psychiatrist was assigned to evaluate Soo-yeol. This psychiatrist reportedly worked at a youth center, specializing in counseling runaway teenagers. At this point, Kay appeared. He reminded Soo-yeol about the money he had seemingly randomly donated, which was, in fact, given to this very youth center. There might be a connection. Thus, Soo-yeol went to see the psychiatrist. Kay remained by Soo-yeol's side throughout the therapy sessions. Soo-yeol constantly glanced towards Kay, a subtle gesture the psychiatrist picked up on. It seemed the psychiatrist had quickly discerned Soo-yeol's inner turmoil and wanted to discuss his childhood memories. Soo-yeol was confused. The psychiatrist had previously suggested that Kay's emergence might be linked to childhood trauma. Under the psychiatrist's care, Soo-yeol's childhood memories gradually resurfaced. In his dreams, fragmented memories of his childhood began to piece together. It turned out that as a child, Soo-yeol was often beaten by his father. One time, unable to bear it any longer, he ran away from home. Shortly after, his father unexpectedly passed away. However, for some reason, a piece of Soo-yeol's memory was missing. It was the 6 months leading up to him running away. Memories of that period seemed to have been erased. His intuition told him something had happened during those 6 months. Perhaps that held the explanation for his multiple personality disorder. Soo-yeol desperately sought answers. Kay suddenly appeared in his dream. But before Soo-yeol could understand what was happening, the psychiatrist woke him up. Kay's unexpected appearance made Soo-yeol realize he must be connected to his childhood trauma. Perhaps Kay held the key to unlocking the puzzle. But even the psychiatrist couldn't understand this. Soo-yeol was frantic. He wanted to know what had happened in the past. He wanted to know who he truly was. Before this profound philosophical question could be answered, a bizarre case arose. On a sunny day, a young woman wearing a raincoat splattered with blood stumbled into the police station, her face etched with terror. She claimed to have cremated her father. Then she collapsed. A small packet of powder fell from her person. On the packet was a drawing of an eye. It was a newly developed drug from a recently emerged organization. Councilman Do and Chief Kim had helped this organization distribute this same drug earlier. Since Chief Kim of the narcotics unit had been arrested by Soo-yeol, his superiors gave him full authority over this new investigation. He was ordered to eradicate this drug trafficking organization. Coincidentally, the woman who cremated her father was connected to this drug. Soo-yeol had a hunch that this case could be the gateway to investigating the mysterious organization. The investigation revealed the woman's name was Bi Yanzu. The father she cremated was a retired police officer. Coincidentally, this Officer B had a connection to Soo-yeol. Years ago, Officer B was involved in a bribery case. Soo-yeol was in charge of the investigation. And the person who provided Soo-yeol with evidence of Officer B's bribery was his daughter, Yang-do. Because Officer B had a history of abusing his daughter, Yang-do, unable to endure it any longer, chose to end his life. Unfortunately, back then, Soo-yeol hadn't paid much attention to the case. He only managed to get Officer B fired. After Officer B returned home, he severely punished his daughter. Because of this abusive father, Yanzu's life was filled with darkness. Soo-yeol felt a pang of guilt. If it weren't for him back then, perhaps Officer B would have been imprisoned. And Yang-do wouldn't be in this situation. Out of shame, Soo-yeol took a special interest in this case. As it happened, Hee-jom was temporarily transferred to Soo-yeol's anti-corruption unit. Hee-jom interrogated Yang-do. Tests revealed that Yang-do had used the drug. Hee-jom wanted to know where Yang-do had obtained it. But no matter what he asked, Yang-do claimed ignorance. Meanwhile, Kyung-tae uncovered a crucial clue. Before acting, Yang-do had traveled several dozen kilometers to purchase a raincoat. Moreover, she seemed to have intentionally left her bank card information, as if she was afraid no one would know she was responsible. There was an even more puzzling aspect to the case. Kyung-tae found a video on Yanzu's computer. It was a recording of Yanzu committing the act of killing her father. Hee-jom speculated that Yanzu might have intended to send the video to someone, which was why she recorded it. In other words, there was likely a team behind Yanzu's actions, pulling the strings. It was highly probable that they were the ones who supplied her with the eye-marked drug. The problem was that Yanzu used the dark web, making it impossible to trace the IP address of the recipient. Soo-yeol devised a plan. He sought out the psychiatrist who had previously hypnotized him, showing him Yanzu's video and hoping the doctor could analyze it from a psychological perspective. As expected, the psychiatrist offered a diagnosis after viewing the video. The doctor uttered one word: gaslighting. More specifically, he explained that a child subjected to domestic violence, growing up in an environment lacking affection, becomes highly susceptible to manipulation. If someone intentionally manipulates them, these children completely lose their ability to discern right from wrong, mistaking the manipulator's desires for their own. They become puppets, controlled and manipulated. Therefore, it was imperative to find the person Yanzu trusted most. This person was highly likely the mastermind behind the scenes. Soo-yeol went to see Yanzu's friend, accompanied by Kei, whose curiosity was even stronger than Soo-yeol's. From this friend, Soo-yeol obtained a vital clue. It turned out that Yanzu had previously visited the youth center. Her homeroom teacher had taken her there. Soo-yeol immediately contacted the teacher to inquire about the situation. The teacher explained that she had taken Yanzu to the center to see a counselor, a Dr. Shin. Upon hearing this name, Soo-yeol had a realization. A few days prior, his superiors had ordered him to visit the center for a consultation to assess his fitness for duty after the forced drug injection. The psychiatrist in charge of his psychological evaluation at the center was none other than Dr. Shin. At the time, Soo-yeol had felt that Dr. Shin was incredibly perceptive, seemingly able to see right through him. The teacher added that Yanzu heavily relied on Dr. Shin, sometimes even visiting him on her own. Just then, Kyung-tae uncovered another crucial piece of evidence. On the day of the incident, before purchasing the raincoat, Yeonju had met someone at a cafe. That person was Dr. Shin. Furthermore, Hee-joon's investigation revealed that Yeonju had attempted suicide in the hospital the day before, and the person who visited her beforehand was also Dr. Shin. Too many coincidences converged, all pointing towards Dr. Shin. At this point in the investigation, Soo-yeol was almost certain that Dr. Shin had exploited Yeonju's trust and reliance to manipulate her emotionally. He was playing a game, controlling Yeonju and everyone else involved. But things didn't go as Soo-yeol expected. He went to the youth center. After a round of questioning, Dr. Shin appeared bewildered. Pressed by Soo-yeol, Dr. Shin showed him a video. He had a habit of recording his therapy sessions. On that day, he had indeed met Yeonju at the cafe, but they only discussed ordinary psychological issues. Moreover, Yeonju had refused his help. Now it was Soo-yeol's turn to be stunned. The investigation had hit a dead end. Soo-yeol could only return to Yeonju, hoping to find evidence of Dr. Shin's guilt. But Yeonju remained despondent, claiming ignorance to everything. His colleagues' continued investigation revealed nothing suspicious about Dr. Shin. He had no history of drug use and had even proactively submitted numerous documents related to the case, seemingly wanting to assist the police. His colleagues agreed that someone like him was unlikely to be the mastermind. But Soo-yeol remained suspicious of Dr. Shin. Soo-yeol's relentless pursuit of this case stemmed not only from his guilt towards Yeonju, but also from something more profound. Like Yeonju, Soo-yeol had also experienced domestic violence, and it seemed Dr. Shin had immediately recognized his childhood trauma. More than a counselor, Dr. Shin resembled a hunter stalking his prey. Perhaps his childhood trauma was connected to this case. Soo-yeol went to the house he had lived in as a child. The old house was now in ruins. Arriving at a familiar spot, memories began to stir within him. He saw himself as a child being brutally beaten by his father, the image of his battered, younger self vividly present before him. Soo-yeol wanted to give chase, but a sudden headache struck. The next moment, he found himself in that familiar hallway. The room at the end of the hall drew him in with an inexplicable force. A vague awareness told him a secret lay hidden there. He reached for the door, but Kay appeared, desperately trying to stop him. Soo-yeol pushed past him and opened the door. Blinding light spilled out. In a blink, the light vanished, and Soo-yeol was standing on a rural road, Kay nowhere in sight. His headache intensified. Just then, Yeonju escaped from the hospital. Soo-yeol called Dr. Shin, who had a unique perspective on the case. He believed someone was manipulating Yeonju's emotions, playing a game. This person deliberately placed Yeonju near Soo-yeol, filmed them, and leaked the video. They were trying to communicate something. Soo-yeol wanted to press for more information, but a groan came from the other end of the line. Sensing something was wrong, he rushed to the medical center. Dr. Shin had been hospitalized. Yeonju had attacked him. On Dr. Shin's computer, Soo-yeol discovered a location marker. It pointed to his childhood home. He raced there. As he suspected, Yeonju was waiting, seemingly expecting him. "What is going on?" Soo-yeol demanded. But Yeonju, as if controlled, mumbled. "What's the date?" Soo-yeol told her. "It's time," she murmured, then took her own life with a scalpel. Yeonju was gone. The investigation grew more complicated. Fortunately, Dr. Shin recovered. By now, Soo-yeol understood. A series of orchestrated events, all connected to him. Someone had set the stage. The police, Dr. Shin, and Yeonju were merely pawns. The mastermind's ultimate target was Soo-yeol, luring him into a trap. Dr. Shin, recognizing this, agreed to help. The next day, Kyung-tae found Yeonju's dark web account and password. Soo-yeol logged in and immediately received a message. The sender promised to see him soon, even using his birth name, Jae-hyui. Soo-yeol knew this was the mastermind. Jae-hyui was his name before his adoption. The day his adoptive mother found him, he had run away from home, covered in blood. Coincidentally, his father had died in a fire that same day. But Soo-yeol couldn't recall that memory, no matter how hard he tried. His agonizing headache returned, stirring fragmented memories. The familiar hallway appeared in his mind. Room 1002 at the end. He remembered the manipulated girl who killed herself. Before she died, she mentioned October 2nd. The room number was a date. He pushed open the door and saw a young boy in a yellow raincoat standing next to his father's body. A knife lay on the floor. Looking closer, the blood-soaked boy was his younger self. Suyol was horrified. Had he killed his own father? He searched for news articles from that year. According to the reports, his father hadn't died in the fire, but had been murdered beforehand. He sought out his adoptive mother for answers, but she knew little. He was only a boy then. When she found him, he was covered in blood, clearly traumatized. His prior memories were gone. The only thing he remembered was his name. That same day, his father was found dead. But Suyol knew nothing about it. His mother's memories offered no clarity. Then, Kay arrived. Seeing him, Suyol flew into a rage. In his previous dream, Kay had stopped him from opening that door. His gut told him Kay knew something. He furiously pressed Kay for answers. Finally, Kay confessed. Just as Suyol feared, he, too, worried he was responsible for his father's death. Hearing this, Suyol immediately sought out a psychiatrist. He mentioned the date he saw in his subconscious hallway, October 2nd. But his father hadn't died on that day. What did it mean? The psychiatrist explained that Suyol's subconscious was preserving selective memories, even distorting the past. What he saw in his subconscious wasn't necessarily the truth. In other words, Suyol wasn't necessarily a murderer. But the doctor continued. The reason your subconscious is distorting the past is to hide an even more terrifying truth. This left Suyol deeply unsettled. To uncover his past, he began reviewing his father's case files. He had only one lead, October 2nd. He quickly discovered a crucial detail. On October 2nd, 20 years prior, a drug dealer named Cheng had been murdered. Coincidentally, this man lived near Suyol's childhood home. 20 years ago, drug dealer Cheng Ti was killed. The prime suspect was his son. But soon after, the police arrested another suspect, Baek Jun. They found a bloody knife and a blood-stained yellow raincoat at his house. Initially, Baek Jun vehemently denied ever seeing the weapons. But later, he fell silent, accepting his fate. Suyol rushed to see Baek Jun, who was now out of prison. Baek Jun still remembered the crime, but something felt off to Suyol. It was as if Baek Jun was reciting a script rather than recalling a memory. Was someone manipulating the case from behind the scenes? Before he could process this, Kay arrived on his bicycle, claiming he could help Suyol remember his past. Kay drove Suyol to the countryside, near his old home. Suddenly, Kay steered the bike straight into a lake. Both plunged into the water. Strangely, Suyol felt familiar with the lake, as if he'd been there before. Meanwhile, Hee-jom was also investigating. She contacted Baek Jun's former lawyer, who recalled a peculiar detail. After Baek Jun's imprisonment, he received numerous letters, all from the same person. Hee-jom informed Suyol. He and Kay investigated Baek Jun's house, confirming their suspicions. The letters psychologically manipulated Baek Jun into accepting the blame for the murder. The sender was Ching Yun-ho, the son of the murdered drug dealer. Baek Jun wasn't the killer. Someone had taken advantage of his drug-induced state to implant false memories. Despite this, Baek Jun insisted he was guilty. In a fit of agitation, he pushed Suyol into a water tank. As Suyol's head went underwater, his subconscious awakened. 20 years earlier, after being abused by his father, Suyol tried to drown himself in the lake. But he encountered an older boy. This boy was Young Yun-ho. Like Suyol, Young Yun-ho was also abused by his father. The two boys, sharing similar traumas, connected. At Cheng Yun-ho's suggestion, both entered a youth center. Remembering this, and connecting it to the other clues, Suyol had a realization. Could the mastermind behind the dark web, the one manipulating abused children, be Young Yun-ho? Suyol logged onto the dark web, confirming his suspicions. The other party admitted it. He was Young Yun-ho. Furthermore, Young Yun-ho told Suyol, "Our relationship is very special." This statement plunged Suyol into a state of crisis. At night, Kay's personality takes over Suyol's body. He visits a psychiatrist, wanting to know if his memory of knowing Ching Yun-ho is distorted. The psychiatrist says memories can be distorted, but the feelings associated with them aren't fake. Kay states bluntly, He remembers that time, and he only feels one thing: the urge to kill. During the day, Kay disappears, and Soo-yeol returns. He visits the youth center to look at his old records. There are many photos of him and Chung Yoon-ho together. It seems they had a close relationship back then. Recognizing the background of one photo, Soo-yeol goes to the roof of the center. There, he encounters a young woman about to jump. After Soo-yeol stops her, she hurries away. At this point, Soo-yeol doesn't realize how important this girl will be to the investigation. Meanwhile, Kyung-tae is investigating a different case. A few days ago, Dr. Shin of the youth center was almost killed. The attacker was a young woman named B, a victim of emotional manipulation. A young man named Cheng Hyun witnessed the attack. Kyung-tae seeks out Cheng Hyun for questioning. During their conversation, he notices numerous bruises on Cheng Hyun's body. Despite his questioning, Cheng Hyun refuses to speak. A few days later, Kay and district officials visit Cheng Hyun's home. The officials explain that his parents are deceased, and he lives with his older brother, who has a criminal record. The bruises are likely from his brother. Kyung-tae expresses sympathy for Cheng Hyun. However, upon entering the home, they discover Cheng Hyun's brother dead, with Cheng Hyun sitting catatonically, staring at the body. Soo-yeol takes charge of the investigation into the brother's murder. He has a strong feeling that this case isn't simple. Cheng Hyun lived at the youth center and was a victim of domestic abuse, but no matter how much Soo-yeol questions him, he refuses to provide any useful information. Furthermore, Kyung-tae finds evidence of Cheng Hyun's alibi. At the time of the murder, he was stealing money from the store where he worked, caught on camera. Therefore, he couldn't be the murderer. Regarding this, Cheng Hyun only says one thing: "Hell is over." Soo-yeol latches onto this phrase. Both the girl B, who attempted suicide, and Chung Yoon-ho, in his memory, said the same thing. Could these cases be connected? Soon, Soo-yeol discovers a vital clue in the security footage near Cheng Hyun's house. A young woman appears in the footage. This is the same woman Soo-yeol encountered on the youth center roof. According to the timestamp, she appears shortly after the time of the brother's murder. Could it be a coincidence? The investigation reveals the girl's name is Soyeon, a university student who frequently volunteers at the center. Soo-yeol returns to the center's rooftop. He realizes Soyeon wasn't trying to jump, but was looking down at something. Following her line of sight, Soo-yeol discovers a covered well in the grass below. He opens it and finds a yellow raincoat and a bloody hammer. Putting the clues together, Soo-yeol concludes: Soyeon killed Cheng Hyun's brother. The items in the well are the murder weapons. The top priority is to find Soyeon. However, when they finally locate her, she's been severely injured. She's rushed to the hospital and undergoes surgery. According to his colleagues, there's no evidence linking Soyeon and Cheng Hyun. If that's the case, why did Soyeon kill his brother? Just as Soo-yeol is racking his brain, Kyung-tae makes a crucial discovery. Soyeon has an ex-boyfriend named Sung-won. Sung-won was abusive towards Soyeon. Her injuries are likely his doing. Additionally, by following Cheng Hyun, Kyung-tae discovers that Sung-won is present everywhere Cheng Hyun goes. Soo-yeol understands. Cheng Hyun is following Sung-won. The connection between the four individuals becomes clear. Cheng Hyun, whose brother was murdered. Soyeon, whose ex-boyfriend is Sung-won. Sung-won, who abused Soyeon. Soo-yeol concludes. Cheng Hyun and Soyeon made a murder pact. Soyeon killed Cheng Hyun's brother. And Cheng Hyun will kill Sung-won for Soyeon. That means Sung-won is in danger. As Soo-yeol predicted, when he found Sung-won, Cheng Hyun was about to attack. Luckily, Soo-yeol arrived just in time and successfully protected Sung-won. While struggling with Cheng Hyun, looking into his eyes, Soo-yeol's subconscious becomes increasingly clearer. The door at the end of the hallway opens. Someone wearing a yellow raincoat is physically assaulting Soo-yeol's father. The person turns around. It's Chung Yoon-ho. He's the true perpetrator. At this moment, Kay appears. He looks strange, covered in blood, holding a knife, saying he offed someone. Prompted by Kay's words, Soo-yeol's memories become clearer. Years ago, just like Soo-yeol, Chung Yoon-ho was also a victim of domestic abuse. After a chance encounter, Ching Yun-ho brought Su-yeol to the youth center for shelter. During that time, he proposed a murder exchange with Su-yeol. He would kill Su-yeol's father, and Su-yeol would kill his. Su-yeol can't believe this memory is real, but Kei insists. Memories can be fabricated, but feelings can't. Your feeling at that time was rage, enough to want to off someone. Su-yeol can't accept it. Kei repeatedly apologizes, saying he dragged Su-yeol into the abyss. Su-yeol still struggles to accept it. Kei then leaves. After leaving, Kei doesn't return. Su-yeol visits the psychiatrist. He can't believe Kei, someone who wants to save the world, would kill his father. But the psychiatrist explains that the only person Kei wants to save is Su-yeol. Kei is a second personality, created by Su-yeol's subconscious as a defense mechanism during his youth. Therefore, Kei is capable of killing to protect Su-yeol. But Su-yeol reconsiders. What if it's all Ching Yun-ho's scheme? Knowing Su-yeol lost his childhood memories, he manipulated him, creating false memories to make him believe he killed his own father? It's highly possible. Su-yeol decides to uncover the truth. The key lies with Ching Hyeon. During the previous investigation, Su-yeol discovered Ching Hyeon was also a victim of manipulation. He made a murder pact with a girl named Soyeon. Soyeon helped Ching Hyeon kill his brother. Ching Hyeon also tried to kill Soyeon's ex-boyfriend, but was stopped by Su-yeol. Finding Ching Hyeon is crucial for a breakthrough. Su-yeol goes to Ching Hyeon's house, but instead of finding him, he encounters a group of illegal immigrants. One of them is a notorious Southeast Asian gangster connected to a drug trafficking organization from a few months prior. Su-yeol apprehends them all. Next, Su-yeol visits the restaurant where Ching Hyeon used to work. Sure enough, Ching Hyeon is hiding there. Su-yeol tries to persuade him to reveal the truth, as he shares a similar past. This time, he wants to protect Ching Hyeon. Su-yeol's sincerity seems to move Ching Hyeon. He's about to confess when the restaurant phone rings. It's Ching Yun-ho. As always, he speaks in cryptic, sinister tones. Su-yeol suspects he's nearby and rushes out to search, but he can't find him. When he returns, Ching Hyeon is gone. Su-yeol questions the restaurant owner and receives crucial information. Soyeon's ex-boyfriend, Sung-wan, was detained for a few days for domestic violence and then released. After his release, Sung-wan wanted to find the person who tried to kill him, Ching Hyeon. The illegal immigrants hiding in Ching Hyeon's house last night were sent by Sung-wan. Su-yeol uses this information to obtain an arrest warrant for Sung-wan. Kyung-tae is tasked with arresting Sung-wan. However, he has already escaped. Security footage shows that after fleeing, Sung-wan was found by Ching Hyeon, who knocked him unconscious and took him away, heading towards the hospital where Soyeon is staying. Su-yeol has a bad feeling. Ching Hyeon will definitely kill Sung-wan to fulfill the murder pact. Fortunately, Su-yeol finds Ching Hyeon on the hospital roof. But Ching Hyeon is attacking Sung-wan. Su-yeol tries to stop him, but Ching Hyeon says, "It's too late." It turns out Ching Hyeon contacted Ching Yun-ho through the dark web. Initially, influenced by Su-yeol's advice, Ching Hyeon wanted to back out. But Ching Yun-ho threatened Soyeon's life, forcing him to attack Sung-wan. Ching Hyeon tearfully confesses everything to Su-yeol, adding, "He's been watching me all along." Su-yeol looked up. Sure enough, there was someone on the roof of the building opposite. Su-yeol knew it was Ching Yun-ho. Just then, Kyung-tae arrived. Su-yeol immediately ordered Kyung-tae to protect Ching Hyeon, while he went to apprehend Ching Yun-ho. Although he caught up, Su-yeol was knocked to the ground by Ching Yun-ho. The beating triggered a flashback to Su-yeol's youth. Back then, Ching Yun-ho was about to kill Su-yeol's father. Su-yeol tried to intervene but was struck by Young Yun-ho. Young Yun-ho reminded Su-yeol that he had betrayed his father. According to the rules of the exchange, he would suffer the same fate. Now it was his turn. The past memory intertwined with the present. Currently, Su-yeol was being brutally beaten by Ching Yun-ho. Suddenly, the door to his subconscious opened. Someone stepped in. It was Kei. Kei had returned. It turned out Kei hadn't forgotten his vow to protect Su-yeol. Facing the young Su-yeol being beaten by Ching Yun-ho, Kei intervened, delivering a punch to Ching Yun-ho. Kei's appearance gave the weakened young Su-yeol the courage to stand up and berate Ching Yun-ho, calling him a demon who enjoyed tormenting others. K's righteous words convinced Soo-yeol that K definitely hadn't harmed Chang Yun-ho's father. K swiftly subdued Young Yun-ho with a few moves. But when Soo-yeol removed Young Yun-ho's mask, he discovered it was Bok Joon. At that moment, Soo-yeol's phone rang. It was Chang Yun-ho. He laughed coldly, having witnessed everything from nearby. Through observation, he had learned about Soo-yeol's multiple personality disorder. Soo-yeol realized he had been played. Now he had to find Chang Yun-ho's whereabouts and true identity. He still only had one clue: Cheng Hein. Kyung-tae brought Cheng Hein to the police station, but Cheng Hein remained silent. Soo-yeol then brought Cheng Hein to his own home. His foster mother prepared a meal for Cheng Hein. Seeing the warmth between Soo-yeol, his foster mother, and his brother, Cheng Hein was touched. He had always longed for a home like that. Soo-yeol told Cheng Hein that it was thanks to his foster mother and brother that he still had a home. There were still many good people in the world. The warm meal and Soo-yeol's words gradually warmed Cheng Hein's heart. At the same time, Hee-jom was investigating the drug trafficking organization. Neither she nor Soo-yeol expected this organization to be connected to Young Yun-ho. Due to the previous BEM case, the drug trafficking organization was in trouble. The organization's boss planned to clear out their drug stash and leave Korea. But a wholesale buyer misjudged the timing and offered too low a price, displeasing the boss. She ordered her subordinates to eliminate the buyer. Hee-jom caught wind of this case. According to witness statements, the perpetrator was one of the organization's henchmen, named Andre. To investigate the case, Hee-jom sought out an informant. Following the informant's lead, Hee-jom learned the identity of the drug trafficking organization's boss and found a eye candy drug manufacturing facility. The boss was inside. She was calling Andre. A few days prior, a woman surnamed B had somehow obtained some of their drugs and then harmed her own father. The boss was suspicious. At the time, the organization was being pursued by the police. Logically, many people would avoid buying from them to avoid trouble. But this B woman had insisted on doing so. Furthermore, according to the investigation, the B woman hadn't bought the drugs herself. The boss suspected someone was trying to manipulate the market and had devised this scheme. Before leaving, she had to find this person. Andre quickly found Bok Joon. Under duress, Bok Joon confessed. He had bought the drugs to lure Soo-yeol into a trap. Andre tried to ask about the mastermind behind it all, but he was attacked. In the darkness, he couldn't see the attacker's face, but he was certain this person was the mastermind. The mastermind didn't say a word. He eliminated Andre, and since Bok Joon was his man, he took care of him too. At the same time, Hee-jom burst through the door, intending to arrest the organization's boss. Unfortunately, after a struggle, she escaped. After the boss fled, Hee-jom and Soo-yeol arrived at the scene. Andre and Bok Joon were dead. Hee-jom recalled something the boss had said during the fight: "Who is the mastermind the police are after?" Soo-yeol realized something. They were pursuing Young Yun-ho, and the boss was also looking for this person. But what was the connection between Young Yun-ho and the drug trafficking organization? The puzzle deepened. Soo-yeol became aware of this terrifying mind game that Chang Yun-ho was enjoying. Left with no other choice, Soo-yeol went to the youth center to find Dr. Shin and ask him about his multiple personality disorder. He hoped the doctor could help. Dr. Shin agreed, but in reality, this was all part of Soo-yeol's plan. The previous day, Soo-yeol had taken food prepared by his foster mother to Cheng Hein. Finally, Cheng Hein revealed Chang Yun-ho's true identity. A few days earlier, Cheng Hein had been at the youth center and saw the bee woman crying. She seemed to be psychologically manipulated, and the person in front of her at the time was Dr. Shin. Soo-yeol understood. Dr. Shin was Chang Yun-ho. But the problem was, Cheng Hein's testimony alone wasn't enough to incriminate Dr. Shin. Soo-yeol was determined. He and Kay had to defeat this demon. So, Soo-yeol pretended to go to the youth center for counseling about his multiple personality disorder. During the session, Dr. Shin asked to speak with Kay. Soo-yeol agreed. When facing Kay, Dr. Shin was quite open. He admitted to being Chang Yun-ho and claimed that he, like Kay, wanted to protect Soo-yeol. Furthermore, Dr. Shin brought up an incident from the past. Soo-yeol had fled his home, leaving his seriously injured father behind, but leaving Chang Yun-ho and Kay there, and K had violent tendencies. Dr. Shin asked, "So, Soo-yeol, how do you know whether it was Chang Yun-ho or K who attacked your father?" Soo-yeol knew Chang Yun-ho was trying to manipulate K, attempting to blame him for his father's murder. But Soo-yeol completely trusted K. To find evidence, Dr. Shin set a trap. Under the cover of darkness, Soo-yeol and K snuck into Dr. Shin's office. They found his video recordings, including one of a counseling session with Cheng Hein. In the video, Dr. Shin suggested that Cheng Hein join a group therapy session with others who were suffering, to help each other. In reality, he was manipulating and instigating abused children into the human trafficking ring. Soo-yeol showed the video to his colleagues. But the problem was, Dr. Shin didn't explicitly mention human trafficking in the video. The videos weren't enough to prosecute him. There was only one way to incriminate him: find a link between him and the drug trafficking organization. They had to prove he had killed Andre. Then he wouldn't be able to escape. But this wasn't easy. The drug trafficking boss had broken into the Forensic Institute, stolen Andre's body, and was preparing to bury him. However, Hee-jom had fought the boss before. Her intuition told her the boss would definitely seek revenge for Andre. Sure enough, that evening, as Soo-yeol parked in front of his house, the boss appeared in his car and injected him in the neck. It turned out the boss had recorded her last phone call with Andre. The recording revealed that Andre had discovered Chang Yun-ho's motive for buying the drugs was to lure Soo-yeol out. Then, Andre was eliminated. The recording also captured the voice of Andre's killer. Now, the boss had come to Soo-yeol. She wanted to know who the killer was. During the confrontation, Soo-yeol promised the boss that they had the same goal, to catch the mastermind. He asked for her cooperation. In return, he agreed to help her find Andre's killer and avenge him. The boss agreed. She handed over the recording and slipped away. With crucial recorded evidence, Soo-yeol secured an arrest warrant for Dr. Shin. But as he prepared to make the arrest, he received a phone call. The caller was Bok-joon. He was still alive. Moreover, his tone of voice was strange. Soo-yeol rushed to meet Bok-joon. But upon their meeting, Bok-joon suddenly declared, "Soo-yeol is Chang Yun-ho." Before Soo-yeol could react, Bok-joon attacked him. At that moment, Dr. Shin appeared. Then, a shocking event unfolded. Catching Soo-yeol completely off guard, Dr. Shin murdered Bok-joon right in front of him. It turned out that when Soo-yeol realized Dr. Shin was Chang Yun-ho, Dr. Shin also realized Soo-yeol had uncovered his true identity. The day before, Chang Yun-ho, aka Dr. Shin, had sent a letter to Bok-joon. The letter was psychologically manipulative, urging Bok-joon to take his own life. Years ago, Chang Yun-ho had murdered his own father. But he manipulated Bok-joon into taking the fall, resulting in Bok-joon serving over 20 years in prison. Now, however, Bok-joon was free. First, he was no longer useful. Second, the secret of the father's murder was at risk of exposure. Therefore, Chang Yun-ho decided to eliminate him. If before, Dr. Shin and Soo-yeol had been engaged in a subtle game of cat and mouse, Dr. Shin's murder of Bok-joon was a blatant declaration to Soo-yeol that he was indeed Jung Yun-ho. Facing Dr. Shin, Soo-yeol had nothing left to fear. Enraged, he couldn't help but attack him. Despite being beaten within an inch of his life, Dr. Shin maintained a sinister smile, as if everything were still under his control. Quickly, Soo-yeol apprehended Dr. Shin. He listed Dr. Shin's crimes, such as murdering his father, instigating human trafficking, and eliminating Bok-joon. But Dr. Shin remained calm. He stated, "These things weren't done by me, but by Chang Yun-ho." Soo-yeol insisted Dr. Shin was Chang Yun-ho, but he shook his head and countered, "Does Chang Yun-ho even really exist?" While Soo-yeol was still confused, Dr. Shin continued his explanation. 22 years ago, Chang Yun-ho attacked his father and then vanished. Why had he reappeared now? Moreover, what a coincidence, K had also appeared at this time. According to Soo-yeol, all the victims were connected to Jung Yun-ho. But according to Dr. Shin, there was one other person connected to all of this: Soo-yeol himself. Furthermore, besides Soo-yeol, no one had ever seen Jung Yun-ho's true face. Soo-yeol finally understood. Dr. Shin was implying, K is Jung Yun-ho. In other words, Jung Yun-ho is Soo-yeol's alternate personality. Dr. Shin then declared, "It wasn't me who killed Bok Joon, it was you." Soo-yeol was on the verge of losing his mind, but he couldn't find any words to refute the accusation. Outside the interrogation room, Hee-jom had overheard everything. Left with no other choice, Soo-yeol confessed to Hee-jom about his multiple personality disorder. He explained to her that he wasn't the killer. It was all a frame-up by Dr. Shin. But Hee-jom was even more bewildered than Soo-yeol. She believed him, but what about everyone else? How could they believe him? After all, only Soo-yeol had witnessed Dr. Shin murdering Bok Joon. This was a huge problem. The recording on the drug lord's phone was useless as evidence. Dr. Shin was released. Simultaneously, Dr. Shin's words in the interrogation room caused Soo-yeol to fall under suspicion by his superiors. Soo-yeol was falling apart. The killer was right in front of him, but he couldn't bring him to justice. Instead, he was being dragged down with him. Soon, a search warrant was issued for Soo-yeol's home. His house was turned upside down. Soo-yeol's foster mother, seeing this, became extremely worried. After Soo-yeol returned home, she quietly pulled him aside and revealed a secret. She said, "I remember now, 22 years ago, the first time I met you, you were holding a knife, and you were covered in blood, because you had just murdered your father and run away." Soo-yeol was baffled. Why had his foster mother suddenly remembered this? But his foster mother comforted him. "I will protect you. Besides, I took care of that knife. Don't worry." Soo-yeol immediately realized that Dr. Shin must have said something to his foster mother. You guessed right. A few days prior, Soo-yeol's foster mother, suffering from Alzheimer's, went to the hospital for a checkup. Coincidentally, the doctor examining her was Dr. Shin. It turned out that besides providing counseling at the center, Dr. Shin also consulted on Alzheimer's cases. Dr. Shin told Soo-yeol's foster mother that she had left a bag behind during her last visit. He claimed it belonged to her youngest son. When she opened it, she found the blood-stained knife. Dr. Shin's words subtly fabricated her memory, making her believe that Soo-yeol had indeed attacked his own father. This caught Soo-yeol completely off guard. Furious, he confronted Dr. Shin and gave him a beating. However, at that very moment, the police found the blood-stained knife at Soo-yeol's home. It became irrefutable evidence accusing him of assault. Because of the knife, Soo-yeol was arrested. At that moment, Soo-yeol looked at Kay. He was too exhausted to explain anything. He pulled out his gun and pointed it directly at Dr. Shin. He wanted to eliminate this evil man. But at the critical moment, Kay stopped him. As a result, Dr. Shin became the innocent party, and Soo-yeol, due to his multiple personality disorder, was committed to a psychiatric hospital. 4 months passed in a flash. Soo-yeol was now deeply despondent, his eyes vacant. Every day, the medical staff gave him medication to quickly expel Kay from his body and cure his disorder. One day, Hee-jom visited him. Hee-jom mentioned Kay, but Soo-yeol, appearing drowsy, asked, "Who's Kay?" Facing such a Soo-yeol, Hee-jom felt utterly helpless. But as soon as she left, when no one was looking, Soo-yeol spat out the pill in his mouth. In reality, he hadn't swallowed a single pill. Not only that, but Kay reappeared. It turned out that everything was an act. Next, he and Kay would break out and launch their perfect counterattack. Soo-yeol had meticulously planned his escape. Living in the hospital for months, he had thoroughly studied the layout. He drew a sketch, marking the locations to avoid security cameras. He also discovered that the head doctor was using drugs containing narcotics to treat patients. Soo-yeol used this information to blackmail the doctor into releasing him. The doctor, unwilling to have his secret exposed, ordered a colleague to eliminate Soo-yeol during the escape. But Soo-yeol anticipated the danger and overpowered him. After getting out, the first person Soo-yeol sought out was the psychiatrist who had previously treated him. After all, Dr. Shin was a master manipulator. To prove his guilt, they had to find a chink in his psychological armor. The psychiatrist said that Dr. Shin always wore a human mask. Such individuals feared having their masks removed. Soo-yeol understood. To remove this mask, he had to prove that Dr. Shin was Young Yoon-ho. This was his only psychological weakness. The psychiatrist also thought of another crucial point. If Young Yoon-ho was Dr. Shin, then who was the real Dr. Shin? This was a vital clue. Just then, a group of police officers was about to burst in. News of Soo-yeol's escape had spread. They were there to recapture him. Soo-yeol quickly fled. Fortunately, Hee-jom and Kyung-tae were there to help him. Soo-yeol jumped into Hee-jom's car and narrowly escaped. Reunited with his allies, things seemed to be progressing much more smoothly. Soo-yeol thought of a key figure, the man in black whom Jung Yoon-ho had sent to attack him earlier. That man knew Jung Yoon-ho's name. This proved that they had known each other before Dr. Shin assumed his new identity. Finding this man could prove that Dr. Shin was Jung Yoon-ho. Unfortunately, this man had been killed by Jung Yoon-ho. It was difficult to trace his identity, but it was still their only lead. So, Hee-jom visited Miss Chung in prison, a former drug trafficker who had once worked for her. Based on a tip from Miss Chung, Hee-jom located another drug dealer. According to him, 10 years prior, there was a patient in a mental hospital. Upon investigation, they discovered that the director of this mental hospital was the psychiatrist Soo-yeol frequently visited. But that year, the hospital went bankrupt, and the director opened a private psychology clinic. Finally, a breakthrough. Soo-yeol immediately contacted the psychiatrist. Luckily, he still had the patient records from 10 years ago. By comparing photos, they could uncover the man's true identity. The result was unexpected. After comparing the records, the psychiatrist discovered that Jung Yoon-ho had used this patient's identity to change his name. This was almost enough to prove Jung Yoon-ho's false identity. But when Soo-yeol rushed to see him, the psychiatrist was injured. Chung Yoon-ho was responsible. It turned out that to control Soo-yeol, Chung Yoon-ho had secretly installed cameras in the clinic. To protect himself, he wouldn't spare anyone who knew his secret. Soo-yeol wanted to call an ambulance for the doctor. Just then, Hee-jom arrived, bringing even worse news: something had happened to Soo-yeol's adoptive mother. Upon entering, his brother informed Soo-yeol that their mother, having somehow heard that Soo-yeol was in danger, had gone to rescue him. Soo-yeol tried to comfort his mother, but she reacted to him as if he were an enemy, even saying he wasn't her son. It turned out that while his adoptive mother was suffering from Alzheimer's, Chung Yoon-ho had manipulated her. He had even sent a letter claiming that the person imprisoned wasn't the real Soo-yeol, and that the real one was hidden away by an imposter. Soo-yeol helped his mother recall past moments, including her promise to protect him. Finally, his heartfelt words brought her back to reality. Just after comforting his mother, Chung Yoon-ho called, demanding to meet Soo-yeol. The location: Soo-yeol's old house where everything began, and where it would all end. Of course, besides Soo-yeol, Kay also went there. After they met, Chung Yoon-ho revealed his true identity. Soo-yeol couldn't understand why Chung Yoon-ho kept targeting him, but he only kept insisting that 20 years ago, he had killed Soo-yeol's father to save Soo-yeol from hell. But Soo-yeol refused to accept that. To prove his point, Chung Yoon-ho started a fire. The flames in Soo-yeol's house mirrored the fire 20 years ago. The only difference was that now, it was Chang Hui trapped in the blaze. It turned out Chang Hui, pretending to cooperate with Chung Yoon-ho, had secretly recorded him. Unfortunately, he was discovered. Chung Yoon-ho, having committed himself, was now determined to eliminate Chang Hui. Looking at the flames, Soo-yeol's memories intertwined with the past. The memories were agonizing. At that moment, Kay appeared, encouraging Soo-yeol. "We've faced fire together before. What's a little danger like this?" Inspired by Kay's words, Soo-yeol rushed into the flames to save Chung Hui, but Chung Yoon-ho attacked him from behind. Finally, Chung Yoon-ho fully revealed his true colors. He wanted Soo-yeol to admit that 20 years ago, he had killed Soo-yeol's father, freeing Soo-yeol from suffering. Unfortunately, whether 20 years ago or now, in Soo-yeol's heart, murder was still murder. Committing a crime wasn't a justifiable excuse. The fire grew larger, but Soo-yeol still refused to cry for help. Chung Yoon-ho stabbed Soo-yeol and left. Now, Soo-yeol was trapped in the inferno, and Kay had fallen unconscious. As Soo-yeol was about to lose consciousness, past scenes flooded his mind, the psychologically manipulated teenagers, Kay constantly guiding him, his mother who always believed in him, and Kay's words, "Believe in yourself." All of this gave Soo-yeol courage and faith. Finally, mustering all his strength, he carried Chung Hui out of the flames. After rescuing Chung Hui, Soo-yeol rushed to intercept Chung Yoon-ho. He now fully understood Chung Yoon-ho had always antagonized him because he feared him. Soo-yeol was the one person Chung Yoon-ho couldn't control. Knowing the truth, it was time to fight back. Soo-yeol and Chang Yun-ho clashed. This time, Soo-yeol didn't flinch. The people he loved believed in him. How could he let them down? Finally, Chang Yun-ho was defeated by Soo-yeol. This time, Soo-yeol was victorious. Justice, courage, faith, these were qualities that only Kei had possessed. But now, Soo-yeol had them too. So, it was time for Kei to leave. Within the door of his subconscious, Kei bid farewell to Soo-yeol. Looking at the alternate personality who had shared his body and weathered so many storms, Soo-yeol felt a deep sense of longing. At that moment, Kei was hiding in a room, crying like a child. Soo-yeol and Kei embraced tightly. To him, Kei was no longer just an alternate personality. Kei was a real person, his best friend. After saying goodbye to Kei, Soo-yeol woke up. Hee-jeom and Kyung-tae had taken him to the hospital. They also brought a lot of good news. Cheng Hui and the psychiatrist had only minor injuries and were recovering well. On the psychiatrist's computer, they found records of Jung Yoon-ho's impersonation. Furthermore, it turned out Chang Yun-ho had been impersonating others for years. He deluded himself as a savior, spending years manipulating and poisoning the minds of patients at the youth center and psychiatric hospital. Cheng Hui testified to all of this. Thus, Chang Yun-ho was unlikely to escape justice, and Soo-yeol could clear his name. Justice had prevailed. With Kei gone, peace returned. Some time later, a meeting was held to discuss Soo-yeol's reinstatement. His superiors advised him, deny the multiple personality disorder. Just say it was a strategy to trap the enemy. But in Soo-yeol's mind, the image of Kei, that crazy name, his heroic name, kept appearing. Finally, Soo-yeol told his superiors, Kei really existed. Moreover, I really like that name. Soo-yeol knew that saying this might prevent his reinstatement. But he couldn't forget Kei, nor could he erase Kei's existence. Soo-yeol temporarily left the police force, helping his brother and adoptive mother run their pizza shop. In the warmth of the small shop, the three of them lived happily. Besides the three of them, the house gained a new member, Cheng Hui. He applied to be a delivery driver. Everything was a fresh start. But Soo-yeol still missed Kei the most. Kei had been gone for a long time. Just then, Hee-jeom arrived. She wanted to know if the person who kissed her last time was really him or Kei. Suddenly, Kei appeared. He clung tightly to Soo-yeol, demanding, "What did you do with Hee-jeom that day?" After all, justice and love were different. He would never give up his Hee-jeom to anyone. But in a flash, Kei disappeared. It was just Soo-yeol's hallucination. Soo-yeol told Hee-jeom, if Kei knew about that day, he definitely wouldn't let me off the hook. Hee-jeom understood it was Soo-yeol that day. Not only that, Soo-yeol planned to return to the police force. Now that Kei was gone, it was Hee-jeom's turn to keep an eye on him. From then on, Soo-yeol successfully returned to the police force, and Chung Yun-ho received his just punishment. The trial ended, but the drug lord suddenly acted. She knocked out the prison guard, unlocked her handcuffs, and confronted Chang Yun-ho. She attacked him in a frenzy, finally avenging Andre. A year passed. A police officer was dismissed for bribery, but Soo-yeol captured the evidence. Hee-jeom and Kyung-tae had now become Soo-yeol's most trusted allies. The dismissed officer revealed that the bribery case pointed to a mastermind, the police chief. Upon learning this, Soo-yeol rushed to the police station. He leaped, legs spread wide, and delivered a flying kick straight to the chief. Everything was just like before. Only now, no one could tell if this person was Soo-yeol or Kei. They only knew one thing: he was the ultimate hero of this era. A madman.